I'm Ben Meiselas, joined by Harry Litman from Talking Feds, the Talking Feds YouTube channel, the Talking Feds podcast. Harry,
A marriage made in heaven. Yeah. Yes, Ben.
do you think we get a verdict next week from Justice Arthur Engoron? This past week, he sent that email letter to Alina Habba, Cliff Robert, Trump's lawyer, saying that he's on notice and they should be on notice as well about potential perjury negotiations, a plea agreement being negotiated between Alan Weisselberg and the Manhattan District Attorney's Office for Weisselberg lying in the New York Attorney General civil fraud case. The courtroom became a crime scene, and Justice Arthur Engoron explained, look, there are New York professional responsibility codes that say, lawyers, if you're aware of this, you're under an obligation to tell me. Habba and Cliff Robert basically said, we're not telling you anything, and we believe that the ethics opinions say the opposite. And Goron basically responded, okay, I gave you your shot to say it, but you should be aware of what the New York professional responsibility says. I will make my order, and then we'll, I guess, figure out if he's going to plead guilty to perjury. So what do you think Engoron does now?
Well, and there's a little drama on that since, Ben, because you're right. Yeah, Habba has this weird, on the advice of my ethics counsel, I will not speak to that. But there is then another filing from Trump, and Engoron, who's looking at being done with the case and being up on appeal, gets hot under the collar and basically goes after them just today. A pretty savage letter where he says, you know, I'm sick of your telling me that I'm biased just because I sometimes rule against your clients. So really, the gloves are kind of off there, and you don't want them to be off with a judge. On the other hand, Engoron doesn't want to do anything that would give rise to anything, the appellate division saying, man, you seemed like you really had it out for him. What's going to happen? He said by the 31st, and we thought the delay maybe had something to do with this Weisselberg plea, but I don't think it does, because he's now, first of all, just to be clear, he doesn't know anything about the Weisselberg plea. It's not as if they give him, you know, they drop the dime and let him know it's coming. He just read an article in the New York Times, and he's made that clear. Could it affect the ruling? I mean, he's got a mountain of stuff to work with against Trump, and this is another maybe rock on top. It does look like Weisselberg lied. I think I know what it's about, and it's not really material to the actual trial, but you know, he is loaded for bear, and we're talking expensive bear, maybe $250 million of bear, maybe $370 million of bear, somewhere in there. And I think if the Engoron plea happens quickly, yeah, that'll, you know, he'll jam that in, as well as remember the couple weeks ago what Judge Jones said in terms of Trump's continuing failure, Trump organization to get their shit together and just be able to give financial information. So look, he got us. He gave himself a sort of extra extension once already. I think that, you know, that goes till mid-month, so like middle of next week. I think he'll try his darndest. I don't think he'll use Weisselberg as an excuse, and it is going to be anywhere between huge and gargantuan verdict against Trump, not just in money, and he's going to have to pony up. Remember, in New York, he's going to have to pony up a bond in order to appeal. But I think he's going to hold Trump. You cannot be in the real estate business anymore in any fashion, and can't be a director or officer. You know, very close to the absolute evisceration of the Trump brand. It's going to be a painful opinion for Trump.
You know, you had Pharma Bro, that Martin Shkreli, who served time in jail as well. He had been sued in federal court under that same New York executive law. He challenged the constitutionality there. And the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, which is at least persuasive authority, affirmed the validity of this statute being utilized by the New York Attorney General's office to fashion remedies such as being banned in the case of Shkreli from the pharmaceutical industry. And so that was kind of a big precedential victory, if you will, for the New York Attorney General's office while Engoron still had not ruled. And I think that's going to be important to Engoron's ruling. Here's what the New York Attorney General.
Let me say one thing about it, if I can, Ben, which is the biggest thing of all. Remember, he's already ruled and is on appeal. The reason this had already been decided, but he ruled before that the certificates, basically the ability of corporations to function, were going to be forfeited, and monitors were going to take over everything. That's already up on appeal, but that is tantamount to, even worse than anything he's considering here. So not just money, but really it's an existential issue for Trump and Trump Organization.
So the way it works with that other appeal is that the enforcement there of the dissolution of these certificates of Trump, the Trump Organization business, that gets kind of temporarily stayed and paused, although it's before the appellate division. Then when there's a ruling here, they kind of get unified, right, and then put on a track together. That's the efficient way of dealing with it, that even New York Attorney General Letitia James was like, that's how we should deal with this, right?
Yeah, and it's how it's got to be. Go ahead.
No, sorry, what were you saying?
Well, I was just going to say, that's why, look, right now, Engoron, let's be candid. He's been really tough on Trump's side. Maybe, with all the hijinks in court, it's deserved. But you got to think now really is the smart time to not look inflamed, to play it kind of cool. So he must have been really steaming that he wrote that letter. But I think for the same dynamic, I'm looking to him. Remember, James starts with a $250 million request, moves it to 370. I'm looking to him to do something under the 370 at least, and maybe even the 250 to show how reasonable he is. He's just, totally, he could do half of what they've talked about and still leave Trump, bloody and beaten in the ring. So I think his mindset's already turning toward appeal.
And there's still prejudgment interest. I think in New York, it's somewhere in the range of, isn't it like 9% compounding? So even if you took 370 and, to use a round number, you used 10%, and then you compounded that over the 6-year statute of limitations period. Although I'd want to get into the technicalities of how the 370 request is being broken down, but you could even potentially, with prejudgment compounded interest, get into stratospheric numbers here, like 500 million, very quickly.
Yeah, like the E. Jean Carroll case, he posted the bond himself. We have some suggestion that he couldn't get anybody, imagine, for this kind of bond. No. But you're right, it wasn't just 5 million. You also have to add on an amount so that the plaintiff is made totally whole if you lose your appeal. And it's the same thing. The plaintiff here is just the AG or the people of New York. They're the ones who have been cheated technically, and he has to disgorge, and that's a lot of disgorgement, including, as you say, interest.
The Cavalier attitude of, Cliff Robert, Alina Habba, I suppose, also being fueled as you go through those political action committee financials, and you see that, like, Cliff Robert, is making somewhere between $3 and $5 million. Alina Habba making money like that. It's probably more money than they've ever seen in a prior, and I don't know, but I'm guessing in a prior decade of practice that they're now getting. But they kind of are like, Judge, how dare you bring up this New York Times article? How dare you declare judicial notice of this as evidence? And the judge, Engoron's like, that's not what I'm doing. You should be taking this very seriously. There was a major news story that a crime was committed here by your client before me. My court is a crime scene. So I've asked you, under your ethical responsibilities, are you aware of the crime? Your answer is no. You should be aware that the New York rules of professional responsibility allow me at a later time to infer that you were aware, hint, hint, if there's notice of it and you do nothing and take no action. So to me, Engoron's also thinking a few steps ahead right there. What would you
agree.
Make when he said
and her answer was, well, I don't represent him criminally, Your Honor. But it's interesting. These guys, they are right there. let's be candid, they're sycophantic, lousy lawyers in Trump's own image. I was at the Supreme Court argument yesterday in the big Colorado case. He had a really solid, and you've read the reports, that's going to win, but he had a really solid professional lawyer who did something interesting. They asked him about the insurrection. He said, I think it's just a riot. It's shameful. He totally disparaged Trump, which is what you've got to do if you're representing him. You need to try to put some distance and make some sympathy, and these guys won't do it. And it reminds you, so we've thought, and it's probably true, he has trouble getting lawyers, but it's more than that. Haba is a good example. He just got to be comfortable with someone who he knows will say whatever crap he wants to think and say, and is either doesn't understand or is just ready to take the hit that she's like exactly what you don't want in a court of law.
We should do a separate hot take on exactly what Trump's lawyer said. Shameful, criminal, violent, and the implications of that. But for now, that's the end of this hot take. Everybody check out Talking Feds on YouTube. They're almost on their way right there. First off, they're partnered with the MeidasTouch Network. Second of all, they're on their way to 150,000 subs. Help them get there this weekend if you can. And then we'll be on our march to 250,000 subscribers there, but let's hit that 150K mark. Thank you, Harry.
Again, thank you, Ben. Thank you, everybody.
And we will be right back with another hot take. Hit subscribe. We're on our way here to 3 million subscribers.
Hey, Meidas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.